Welcome to Cafe Snacks, the most wanted questions of current happenings for UPSC, SSC, and other state administrative examinations. It is OnLearn, and this is Shyam here. Let us move on to the first article. The first article has appeared in Hindu and it speaks about hypersonic cruise vehicle test that puts India in elite club. Now the syllabus as part of prelims it comes in GS paper 1 science and technology and in mains it is part of GS paper 3 that too in science and technology. The topic is hypersonic missile and scramjet engine. The backdrop of this particular article is that the Defense Research and Development Organization has successfully demonstrated the hypersonic air-breathing scramjet technology. Now, what is hypersonic? In aerodynamics, a hypersonic speed is a much greater speed than that of the speed of sound, and it often starts at Mach 5. Now, what is Mach? Mach is a ratio of the speed of a particular object to that of the speed of sound. That means if it is 1 Mach, it is at the speed of sound. If it is 2 Mach, it is twice the speed of sound, like that. So here, hypersonic technology is known technically as hypersonic technology demonstrator vehicle. And this unmanned scramjet demonstration aircraft is a part of DRDO. Now, HSTDV is not a weapon in itself. That is something to be remembered. But it is being developed as a carrier vehicle for hypersonic and long-range cruise missiles. So, hypersonic and long-range cruise missiles can be carried on by using hypersonic technology demonstrator vehicle. Now, HSTDV cruise vehicle is mounted on a solid rocket motor, which takes it to a required altitude. So HSTDV in itself can't reach the atmosphere at a greater speed, but first it need to be carried by a vehicle like a solid rocket motor. Once it attains certain Mach numbers of speed, then the cruise vehicle is ejected out of the launch vehicle. Now the scramjet engine is ignited and it works. Now what is a scramjet engine? Now, scramjet engines are variants category of jet engine that are called air-breathing engines. The ability of engines to handle airflow of speeds in multiple of speeds of sound gives it a capability of operating at those speeds. That means this particular engine is capable of operating high airflows. And a ramjet engine is a kind of combustion engine. And it operates by combustion of fuel in a stream of air compressed by the forward speed of the aircraft itself. Now, as opposed to a normal jet engine. That is the case with the ramjet engine. And let us look into scramjet engine. A scramjet engine is an improvement over the ramjet engine because the former operates efficiently at hypersonic speeds and allows supersonic combustion. So the scramjet engine allows supersonic combustions and it operates efficiently at hypersonic speeds. Whereas the ramjets in contrast operate well at supersonic speeds around Mach 3 but it is not efficient at hypersonic speeds. Now the HSTDV has an air-breathing scramjet engine, which means that it uses the atmospheric oxygen for propulsion and this tremendously reduces the weight of the vehicle, and that is very important. The launch vehicles use combustions of propellants consisting of oxidizer and fuel for deriving energy. Now these air breathing propulsion systems use atmospheric oxygen. Now that is available at 50 km of Earth's surface. At this particular height it is available, and this particular oxidizer, it burns the fuel stored on board and it makes the system much lighter, more efficient and cost effective. Now why this particular technology is a breakthrough? Because the American think tank RAND Corporation says that hypersonic missiles, now they are a new class of military threat because they are capable of maneuvering and flying faster than 5,000 kilometers per hour. The speed and maneuverability enable hypersonic missiles to penetrate most missile defenses. Now, this particular paragraph is the most important. Why? Because UPSC asked such kinds of comparison questions, or they ask this as statements with respect to a prelims question. The only countries in the world which have hypersonic technology are the United States of America, Russia, and China. Now, India is the fourth nation to hold this particular technology in its hand. In addition to war application, India is also trying to use it for civilian applications like launching of small satellites at low cost. Now, how fast is HSTDV? HSTDV can cruise at a speed of Mach 6 or 6 times the speed of sound and rise up to an altitude of 32.5 km in just 20 seconds. So, the hypersonic weapons, when fully completed, pose a challenge to the enemy country. That we need to be remembered. Now, that's all about this particular news article. Let us move on to the next news article. There is a particular news article in the Hindu that speaks about empowering the youth. Now, the syllabus of this particular article is regarding GS Paper 1, that is social issues, in the mains perspective. Now, who is a youth? According to the 2014 National Youth Policy, defined youth as persons between 15 and 29 years. This cohort accounted for, that means this percentage of population accounted for about 27.5%. Now, we need to understand about National Youth Policy with respect to this particular article, which says about the importance of empowering youth and also showing them the beacon of light through properly educating them and giving them skilled works and also enabling them to lead the nation. So the National Youth Policy in this context is very important and need to be looked into. Now, first and foremost, I have taken this article from the government website regarding National Youth Policy. Now, there are 9 or 10 objectives that have been listed regarding youth empowerment, and they need to be looked into in order to understand the National Youth Policy. Now, India lies on the cusp of a demographic transition. That means now India is a country of young people. Majority of the population or the demographic dividend in that aspect is of young people. So, in order to be a great economy, India essentially need to support and increase the efficient labors and also need to give proper education, skills and health awareness to the youth of this nation. That is what the first paragraph or the first statement speaks. Now, what about the youth? What is youth? Now, youth in the age group of 15 to 29 years comprises of 27.5% of the population that have been already discussed. Now, at present, about 34% of India's gross national income is contributed by the youth aged 15 to 29 years. So, there is a huge need to address their demands. And there need to be increased labor force participation by this youth. Now, let us look into third category or the third summation. The government of India currently invests more than 90,000 crores per annum on youth development. So, more amount need to be immediately utilized for youth education and youth employment. Moreover, the National Youth Policy 2014 seeks to define the vision of the government of India for the youth of the country. Now, this particular policy is looking forward to enable youth development and to provide a framework for action for all stakeholders. It is intended to serve as a guiding document. And remember, this particular document is reviewed in 5 years. Now, National Youth Policy 2014 provides a holistic vision for the youth of India, and it is needed to empower the youth of the country to achieve their full potential, and through them, India needs to grow into the best of a nation. For that, 11 priority areas that require specific actions are identified for youth development. And also, the policy, that is National youth policy seeks to recommend specific future policy interventions required in each of the 11 priority areas. That 11 priority areas in which development need to be ensured so that the youth population of this country prosper will be discussed later. Before that, you need to understand that the vision and objectives of NYP 2014. The vision and the objective are to create a productive workforce and also to develop a strong and healthy generation with instilled social values and best community service practices. Also, facilitate participation and civic engagement of the youth of the nation, support youth at risk, and create equitable opportunity for all. Now, the 11 priority areas are education, employment and skill development, entrepreneurship, health and healthy lifestyle, sports, promotion of social values, community engagement, participation in politics and governance, youth engagement, inclusion, and social justice. And also, in order to work towards closing the gaps of these 11 priority areas, every stakeholders need to be informed and they need to be identified and equipped. The government must increase its investment in youth in order to capitalize on the opportunity they present. This is what NYP aims at. And in addition, it is important to monitor and evaluate the success of NYP 2014. It is not just important to create some policy, but also these particular policies need to be reevaluated and they need to be focused and studied so that only then we will be able to identify whether they were successful. Now, the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports should publish a bi-annual report on the status of the youth in order to inform the nation about the progress. So these are certain methods that need to be adopted to equip people and also to inform them about youth's situation in the nation. And also, all through history, youth have been the holders or the harbingers of change. That means whether it is from winning independence for the nation to creating new technologies, they have been always there in the forefront. So the youth population need to be empowered. And also, we need to understand that what is youth according to United Nations. According to United Nations, it defines youth as a persons between 15 and 24 years of age. But in National Youth Policy of 2003, youth was defined as a person of age between 13 and 35 years. But in the current policy document, the youth age group is defined as 15 to 29 years. And also we need to understand that there are a lot of case studies that has been exemplified or spoken about in the particular Hindu article. So the way forward that is being discussed is that India needed an Indian Youth Guarantee Program, similar to the European Union Youth Guarantee Program, but tuned to our country's context. Now, European Union Youth Guarantee Program, it emerged in 2010 at a time when youth unemployment rates were soaring about 20%. An IYG initiative with statutory backing can function as a facilitatory framework for ensuring gainful and productive engagement of youth. This is how the youth population need to be, or the youth populations needs need to be catered. So that's all about this particular article. There is a particular news article in Hindu which highlights the complex Naga conflict, and this comes as a part of the syllabus in GS paper 3 security, and the backdrop is about Naga Peace Accord and also the Naga Framework Agreement that was signed in 2015. First, we need to understand about the history of Naga peace talks and what is happening in Nagaland. Why the Naga peace talks? Now, the Naga issue finds its root in the colonial era, when the Naga Hills became a part of British India. In 1946, the Naga National Council was created, and after Indian independence in 1947, Nagaland was declared independent, and it was under the leadership of A.Z. Fiso. Now, a 9-point agreement was signed between the governor of Assam and Naga National Council granting legislative and executive powers to the people of Nagaland. One of the clauses that was included in the agreement stated that the governor of Assam will be an agent of the government of India, and he will look into, or he will be having the social responsibility or the special responsibility in that case for a period of 10 years to ensure that due observance of this agreement is extended for a further period, and also a new agreement need to be furnished in the future regarding the Naga people. Now, NNC under FISO rejected this 9-point agreement on the grounds that it didn't grant Nagaland or Naga sovereign state. A referendum was conducted in May 1951 to claim that 99.9% of the Naga people supported a sovereign Nagaland. Now, the 16-point agreement followed in July 1960, and it led to the creation of Nagaland on 1st December 1963. Although this particular struggle regarding the Nagaland remained largely peaceful in 40s and 50s, then it became violent after 1956. This was because of an armed ethnic conflict that was led by Naga National Council, which had the aim of forming an independent Nagaland. Now, the government of India sent an army to crush this insurgency. In 1958, Armed Forces Special Powers Act, that is AFSPA, was enacted in the state. And this conflict watered down in the mid 1970s but remained with NSCN led by Muiva and SS Kaplan. Muiva and SS Kaplan are the major leaders of NSCN. Now, what is NSCN? NSCN is the National Socialist Council of Nagaland. Now, you need to understand that who are the key players in the Naga issue. The three main players are, first one, the ethnic Nagas, second, the government of India, and three, the government of Myanmar. The Naga people are not just constituted, or they not just constitute the Nagaland. They are also part of many other states, including Manipur, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, and they have an extension of demography even to Myanmar. The Nagas were historically represented first by NNC, that is the Naga National Council, which in 50s took up arms and formed underground Naga army. Now the NNC in 1975, because of ideological issue, it splitted, and the breakaway faction being NSCN, that is National Socialistic Council of Nagaland, which split further in later years. This was split into two factions, that is NSCN-IM led by Isaac and Muiva, and also NSCN Kaplan led by Kaplan in 1988. Now the objective of NSCN is to establish a sovereign Naga state by unifying all the Naga inhabited areas in northeast of India and northern Burma, which the organization and the people of the area proposed as Nagalim. So, another group is also involved in peace talk in this particular issue, that is Naga National Political Groups, and this is an umbrella organization that is comprising of all Naga tribes. Now presently R.N. Ravi is an interlocutor of the government with regarding to mediating this particular issue. Now what does the Framework Accord of 2015 say? Now there has been a Framework Accord of 2015 that was signed between the Government of India and NSCN. Now what does it say? That is not much in the domain of public, because the government refused to divulge any details regarding the agreement in public. Now before that, you need to understand about the Shillong Accord that was signed between NNC and Government of India in 1975. And in this particular issue, the NNC agreed to give up arms, and the ceasefire agreement between NSC and IM and the center in 1997 is also another important matter that need to be taken into consideration. The Modi government signed a framework agreement with NSCN on 3rd August 2015, and that particular agreement is the latest agreement, and that is known as Framework Accord of 2015. Now, we imagine or we have a speculation that the three main factors that will become important part of this framework agreement would be the stalling the agreement, or that are the factors that are stalling the agreement, and they are the constitution, the flag, and the amalgamation of certain areas of Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, and Manipur adjoining Nagaland to form a greater Nagaland. And this is the particular issue till date, and that's all regarding this particular issue. Let us move on to the next issue. There is an article regarding the Jumbo Savari of Mysore Dasara. The syllabus is as per the prelims and mains. It is part of the art and culture GS paper 1, and the backdrop of this particular news article is Mysore Dasara. Now, what is Jumbo Savari? On Vijayadashmi, that is the traditional Dasara processions, locally known as Jumbo Savari, will be held on the streets of Mysore city. Now, the main attraction of this procession is the idol of the goddess Chamundeshwari, which is placed on a golden mandapa on top of a decorated elephant. And this 750 kilogram golden howdah mounted on the lead elephant Arjuna is the main attraction of the day. Now, as you have understood Jumbo Savari, you need to have some information about Mysuru Dasara. Now, Mysuru Dasara is a royal festival celebrating victory of truth over evil. The legend has it that the goddess Chamundeshwari or Durga slew the demon Mahishasura on Vijayadashmi day. Now, Dasara is a 10-day festival in the region culminating on Vijayadashmi or the 10th day. There will be 10 days of celebration, and all the details of the days are given here. That is not of much importance, but look into the last sentence. On 10th day, a grand spectacular procession is held which starts from Mysore Palace and ends in Banni Mandapa. This large spectacular procession is known as Jumbo Savari. And that's all for today. Please do learn and take a snapshot of all the details that have been given here. Thank you.